In the summer of 2020, the BJP government issued 3 farming laws, with the goal of facilitating and encouraging increasing private sector investment in Indian agriculture, notably in the downstream sectors of marketing, transportation, and storage. The legislative approval process began on September 17, 2020, and received assent 10 days later. Only a week earlier, on September 20th, Prime Minister Narendra Modi described the laws as a watershed event in Indian agricultural history, claiming that they will ensure a complete transformation of the agriculture sector and empower tens of millions of farmers. The main danger lay in that the laws would damage the public market or mandi system, which provides farmers with guaranteed prices, also known as the minimum support price, from government agencies. This shields farmers from having to make distress sales at low rates to private grain trading intermediaries. It is true that the mandi system is far from ideal, and Punjab's farmers have been struggling for some time. The Green Revolution of the 1970s and 1980s promised farmers substantial growth. Whilst before a variety of crops were grown, the Punjab was directed towards only producing wheat and rice at largely subsidised rates. This resulted in a market explosion and an over-reliance on these industries. This resulted in difficult times for Punjab's farmers, since mounting debts and falling yields assured that most farmers were already struggling, especially because wheat and rice cultivation account for the majority of Punjab's economy. This has contributed to an increase in farmer suicides across Punjab, as well as over 65% of those under the age of 35 engaging in substance abuse. Furthermore, the abuse of pesticides and fertilizer in this industry has resulted in higher amounts of pollution and dangerous substances in Punjabi ecosystems. The COVID-19 pandemic has further exacerbated the situation, pushing millions into poverty. The current system is clearly not economically or environmentally viable. So just 5 days after Modi's praise of the laws on the 25th of September 2020, several farmers' outfits announced an intensified agitation against the acts and called for a Bharat Bandh, which received support by as many as 10 central trade unions and 18 political parties. That isn't to say there wasn't some public support for the laws, including an open letter from over 800 academics, but the opposition only grew with their enactment. Protests had begun as early as July 2020, with farmers in Punjab and Haryana taking their tractors onto the road to protest, and the following week farmers held protests in several places across Punjab, including Ludhiana, Moga, Muxar, Fagwara and Hoshiarpur. The protests spread the following month in August 2020, with the All India Kissan Sangharsh Coordination Committee participating in several protests. A few months later, in December, Kaushik Basu, former head economist of the World Bank, branded the new agricultural laws as flawed and detrimental to farmers. By the end of 2020, Punjab and 4 other states had passed a resolution against the farm reform seeking their withdrawal, and solidarity marches being organised across the diaspora. And so it was the new legislation proposed in 2020 which would allow international corporations unfettered access to a broken market that pushed Punjab's farmers to the edge, and brought the world's focus to one of the largest protests ever. After 1 year, 4 months and 2 days of protest and a televised address on 19th of November 2021, Narendra Modi, Prime Minister of India, announced that his government would repeal the laws in the upcoming parliamentary session on December 1st. So it's even clear from that brief summary that the enactment and subsequent passage of these rules sparked fierce opposition from agricultural groups, which began regionally in the key grain-producing state of Punjab before spreading to a national and finally global scale. The opposition stemmed from both the exclusionary form in which the laws were promulgated and passed, with the BJP government using the cover of the COVID lockdown to exclude input from farmers' movements and affected states, as well as the content of the laws themselves, which farmers' movements feared would effectively enable large corporate agribusiness interests to monopolize control over agricultural trade. Although the government has indefinitely delayed the farm laws, everything is still up in the air. Private entities such as those headed by Ambani and Adani are growing more powerful, farmer suicides continue, ecological collapse draws nearer, and protests continue seeking legal recognition of MSP for agricultural produce. On top of all of that, in recent weeks, protests have erupted due to the state government's inaction on raising sugarcane support prices, and 57 different unions have united to shut down a polluting liquor factory in Mansurwal village. In other words, there's still a lot of work to be done. So I hope that makes some sense as to why one of the world's largest protests took place. And if you've been a follower of the channel for a while, you'll recall Harkaran discussing his Kissan project on the last podcast he was a guest on. And considering how many of us were following the demonstration on social media, organising solidarity marches across the diaspora, or doing what we could to raise awareness, I thought it would be interesting to speak with Harkaran, who had flown out and photographed the protest himself, documenting history in real time in the space of just 24 hours. Harkaran's efforts have resulted in this gorgeous 176-page hardcover photo book, which has been available since June 2022 and has captivated social media and people's hearts by storm. So let's first start with finding out how this book came about.
Yeah, so I think it was around November 2021. is when I went end of the month. And I think a few months before, my mum was like, let's go see family. And I thought, okay, this is the perfect time for me to take back the copies of Bind as well that I had just sitting there because I had set aside like 30 books for the Bind. So I was like, okay, finally I can go back and give this project to the world, like back to the Bind. And even though it's sold out, so I was like, this is closure, like this is it, it's done. And in the back of my mind, I thought, okay, there's a chance that I might be able to go and see the protest site because it was approaching a year anniversary. And also, obviously, like you said, COVID, no one had been. So it's very unusual that we were seeing this around from like around the world on social media. And there was some photographers that were there that were posting as well. So I think there was like a unique opportunity that not many people have gone, that this hasn't been captured as well. It was in the back of my mind that I could do something. So when we landed at 3 a.m. and you drive past Tikri border from Delhi airport to Punjab. And then when you see it, like you're like, this is real. This is like it's nearly like 10 miles long. You're just driving, you're driving, and it doesn't end. And then something just hits you like, okay, I need to come back. I need to at least come back and visit and see what I can do. So I felt like it kind of became real once I got there. There wasn't a plan to make a book. There wasn't a plan to do anything. But obviously, because I've made one, I knew what to do. I knew how to take the pictures. So I think after a week, we came back. Came back with my mama Ji, and we stayed with our pind at Tikri. And we thought, okay, cool. Let's just stay the weekend, and I'll take as many pictures as I can. And that was it. And I'll decide when I got home.
Many of us have read or seen videos of the protest site going on for almost 10 miles, so I have to ask, what was it like visiting and experiencing such an immense site firsthand?
I think when you arrive at 3 a.m., you are shattered, but there's something like, okay, you feel like, okay, this is our people. This is us. You feel very proud. There's also a sense of, okay, these people are sleeping in the street. It's cold. It's winter time, and it makes you want to join them. There's like a lot of unity, and the energy felt good. So I feel like it kind of is something that draws you in, and and you feel like, okay, how can I help this? What part can I play in this? And I think that's the feeling that I got when I saw the site. So we need to keep documenting this, because if you delete everything on social media, you're just left with a few articles on some newspapers. So this is more of us capturing our own history, and also from a different perspective as well. I think what stood out is how organized everyone was and patient. For I guess being there for 1 year, there was like a sense of we're not going. Like there's a lot of pride, we're gonna win. People would go back, like they would come and stay for a week, go back. So people were like, it was like a thing that everyone was involved in Punjab, that was connected to and supporting. And that's kind of what you got. And there was like old women involved, old people, young people, like everyone together. And that was like a really beautiful thing that you see. Like it's like a different way to protest and come together. And I think sometimes people forget that the book is showing a protest, even though it doesn't look like what you think is a protest from a Western perspective.
In the age of social media, why make a photo book?
I think with a photo book, there is like a sense of story. You're also like editing the story. So I think as a photographer, you have the responsibility to be as honest as possible, because I can go out trying to look for something to happen, like maybe some sort of altercation, or like just showing a certain group of people that were there. But I think that's where you just have to capture and see it as it happens. So you kind of just, for me, it's about just being involved, and being involved allows you to see a broader and holistic story of what's going on. So I think, yeah, the photo book kind of lends itself towards that. So I do see people flicking through the through the timeline, and for like half a second, and then they'll quickly flick through, and then it's very easy to lose it and go back and find it. Whereas a book, I think I've learned from last time, has a longer lifespan and multiple different experiences. You can view it by yourself. You can view it with like your friends. You can view it with family, different multiple generations. So I think it's something that's you can just pick up and touch as well. It makes it a bit more real. Also, with the book, you kind of dictate the narrative. And with that narrative, you're forced to see certain things that you may not choose to see as well.
How many photos did you take, and how did you decide which ones to include?
So I obviously I shoot film, so I took like loads of rolls out. But in the end, I think I only shot around 300 photos, which is actually not a lot these days. Um, we just got there immediately. I'm taking pictures. I think there's one of the stages where they would do the, talks and people would sing and whatever the speeches. It just finished. So everyone was coming out of that. So there was like a hustle and bustle, sun was setting, light was nice. And you're just involved. I think it just felt like, okay, it felt really comfortable. Like these are my people, everyone's Punjabi. And you just kind of get involved. You just like it's like taking pictures at a family function. It's basically like a one giant Glastonbury, but times 10 for our people. And that's what it felt like. And you're just taking pictures at like a festival.
Once you've taken these photos, how long and what happens between then writing the introduction and getting the finished photo book to sale?
So for me, came back, dropped the rolls off at the lab. Then I get the pictures and I saw them. I'm like, okay, wow, this is cool. I have something here. The easiest way to do it, I think other people do it as well, is to just print all the photos. So you just find somewhere cheap to print them, like 4 by 6. And then you just put them all on the floor and see if there's a story there. And because I knew last time, that's kind of I got the pictures developed and scanned at a good resolution. I knew what format to put in. I already took certain pictures of like landscapes that kind of help break up the story and give people a better idea of the space because I'm quite good at taking portraits and being close. So you just lay everything down and then you have the story. And I thought, okay, cool, there's a story here that's some that we can, I guess, share as a community. And then I had to just save the money. So technically, then you just send it off to your designer. She put it together. We just made a few changes, decided on the cover, and then for me, you can print a book in like a month or two if you're really on it. I couldn't do that because I didn't have the money, so I just had to wait and save up to pay for it. I said that's the only reason it maybe came out at the end of June. Well, like obviously you and me and a few other people we know that we kept up to date. We were really into it and informed about it. But a lot of people in our community, they're not aware of what was going on. And also as an opportunity, like some of the big things that happened that we saw on the internet. Like I made sure I found the names, and then you write it down, and then it becomes history and it becomes factual. This happened. This guy came out of the water cannon. Sidhu released a song, and then you can like name people, and then you're like, okay, wow, now I'm writing history as well as capturing it. So that was really nice.
No, I'm not saying this because this is the third time you've appeared on the podcast, but just like your other work, this photo book is brilliant. So I have to ask, what has the reception been like since you've released it?
I think I think people are just proud that it's something like this exists. And from what you said, there are things online that we've taken screenshots or saved some pictures that we've seen online, but to have something in your hand of something that's happened, not even ended it less than a year ago, is crazy. I think also people have been intrigued into the way it's been captured. Like it feels really intimate and calm, and it shows a side that maybe they didn't know what was going on. They were sat here for a year, and it just shows, okay, this is actually what happened every day. And people aren't fighting in the streets and stuff. So I think it was nice, but overall reception has been good. I think in terms of if we talk about like how do you reach people, I think since the last book came out, the social media has changed. Obviously, I use social media to get my projects out there, but people have shifted to other channels. Overall, it's been really well received, and yeah, it's got out into places where I didn't think it would get out to. So I done like an interview with another magazine. I have another interview with someone called It's Nice That and Huck Magazine. Also done a talk I'm doing it. Yeah, I've done a few talks.
It turns out that there were plans for some of Hurghadin's photographs of the Kissan protest to feature in The Guardian, but here's what he had to share about that.
The only place where it should have gone, but it didn't go, was The Guardian. So the reason I was given was there's no names for the people I've captured, which I think was a bit bizarre considering the context of which I took it in is a protest. Obviously, there's reasons for people not to have their names out there as well. So I think there was maybe like a cultural disconnect, but they're seeing it from a perspective of, oh, they've probably posted pictures before and not having names is not like best practice. But I think each context has its own purpose. And here the people wanted their pictures taken like to be shown to the world, but obviously if they're people from like that live in London that don't know about another culture, and regardless of how educated they are, these things can get lost in translation, so you can kind of lose out. So for me it was like, oh my God, there's an opportunity here for the whole world to see who we are. The other thing, that's kind of what was the upsetting bit, but there's a reason why these things happen, so you just got to take the positive from it. And it kind of just showed me, okay, like working independently is why I do all these things. So you have more control over this narrative. Whereas if they had paid me to go out to take pictures, I don't know what or how that would look, how the story would look. So this is why I guess it just reinforces keep doing to me what I'm doing, because it makes sense and it connects with the people that it needs to.
Now, some of you watching may have seen these beautiful postcards that accompanied the photo book, so I had to find out what went into getting these produced.
I guess because I used to do art or have an art collective and like to do art. It's a good way to involve other creatives and or create something together as a community, and also offer that to the rest of the people, because some of the people that are involved, they're like really great artists on their own. But I guess not everyone can afford a painting for a few £100s, or some of the people don't put out work as much. It was a great way for them because they wanted to be involved, and for other people to own something that's created by them, because the way they all produce art is like beautiful. So it was like a nice thing, that like a bonus, because people like to buy prints and like special packages, and this was the special package, like because there's only 100, and I think there's like maybe 10 left now. And also £5 of each sale I can then donate to to a charity as well. So that's kind of the nice thing. So there's like multiple layers to this, that I kind of thought, okay, yeah, this worked last time, and I was able to execute it better this time, because the last time I done it after I launched, this time I had everything ready. And yeah, and we used a broad range of artists from our community, which was really nice.
Where can people buy the postcards or the photo book?
So you can buy it on just my website. So HARK number one KARAN.com, and all my social media links to the website. So yeah, the postcards you can only buy from my website.
It's obvious to anyone who's been following the channel for some time that Hurghadin has made a number of appearances, each time bringing a new project. So for someone with such a creative appetite, I have to ask, what are you working on next?
You always get the exclusive, so I might as well just I am obviously still working on Zimmers of Southall. In terms of the project, I feel like when the documentary came out, the picture photo series wasn't finished. So, when you said, oh, what do you do when you look for a project? So I looked at the pictures, I'm like, this doesn't really tell you anything about Southall and Zimmers. So I was like, okay, let me just take my time. So you can shoot a book in one day, but then the other projects might take a few years. So you kind of get all extremes. So I think I've got a few more days of shooting that I've put in my calendar. And once that's ready, yeah, and it should be something different, something fresh, and about us in Britain. And also a fact that I think there wasn't a sense of space. So when I saw, I'm like, okay, these could be taken anywhere. There's nothing that says, okay, they're in Southall. Whereas with the video, you can see you're in Southall. With the pictures, you can't. So I think, okay, there's those elements missing. And you learn things as you're doing the project, because obviously I didn't know anything about Zimmers, and now I know quite a lot about Zimmers. So it's just that journey that you go on. And yeah, and obviously you become better as a photographer. So it's like making your first album. So I've done technically 2 albums. Now you want to try something else. You might want to sample something else. You might want, so it's kind of the same with creatives because you don't want to be doing the same. And also the people that are buying the work, they don't want to see the same thing. So yeah, I can tell you about one more project. So I went up to Smethwick and I captured like the allotments there for someone. And then I went back because I wasn't happy with the photos. And then they ended up being on the cover of a really cool magazine, a community magazine that came out in January or February, some March maybe. And I think I didn't expect the project to like I didn't realize people love the pictures so much. So I was like, wow, this is insane. No, I thought they were really cool. I was just I just like I usually like I share what I like, I guess. So I didn't expect maybe other people to I guess really connect with it as much as I thought. So I was really like overwhelmed. I'm like, okay, wow, people really love these. And now I think it's kind of calmed down. People, I think it's going to come out as a small project, as like something that people can buy for like maybe £10, 10, £15, and there might only be 100 of them. And I'm working with hopefully someone from Birmingham. So it's a shot outside of London, which I wanted to do. It's shot in Smethwick, which is a community full of upne. And obviously that I can work with someone from Birmingham locally as well to produce this small thing that's kind of just happened. So I thought, yeah, it doesn't always, like you said, doesn't always have to be this expensive book, but it can be something smaller that people can take, and not every project can have its home. It'll be like a smaller, like sort of zine type book. Yeah, maybe like 30 pages or something.
And when could we expect to hear more about that or even see more about that?
I'm actually chatting to the guy today who's gonna make it. So, and then yeah, I'll be sharing that.
Nice. Nice. No, I love it. Well, I've got through all of the questions that I wanted to ask you and probably some extra ones. Is there anything that you wanted to include or want to mention before we obviously wrap up?
Actually, I got a question for you. What's your favorite pictures in the book?
Oh God, there was one of the aunt. There's one of an auntie who's got her back to us. In the photo. Hold on, let me just get the book. There's one of an auntie who
Doing her
has,
ball.
yeah, and she's got her back to us, and it's the one photo that stuck out because
I think it's the same photo that I like.
oh, that's the synchronicity of that is pretty jokes. I thought the fact that you captured so many photos of women really important, but then I also then was to think about like the what is it the gender what is it the
Balance.
gender yeah the gender balance, and it like as in, so I guess what I'm trying to ask is, were there literally like that many women, or did you make a point of capturing like the more photos of women, if that makes sense?
I would actually. I think the on my bin that I stayed with, I think might have been more women in the women's sleeping area. So there was low. Yeah, it was 50-50, I'd say.
No, fair. So there's the photo of the auntie which I'm trying to find, but there's the other photo of the guy holding a Karl Marx pamphlet.
Yeah.
That photo stuck out because I just thought it shows the diversity.
There's actually a further on. Someone has the communist tattoo on their hand, on the flip side of their palm. So like the communist stuff is also part of, I guess, the protest and how people came together with the unions, as well as obviously Sikhi being a massive part of this.
So I found the photos of the auntie. In terms of why it stood out, I just think it's a very graceful photo, as in there's so much like as in there is, so the fact that in still in her age she takes so much pride in her hair, the fact that her hair is in such a good condition, the fact that she could also just be anyone's grandma, like she could be your grandma, my grandma,
Exactly.
like she could be, and in a lot of cases, like obviously with myself kind of having kids from a young age, there's also like a personal connection. It kind of reminds you of all of the times that you've had to do your case or whatever. And obviously
It crosses genders, right? As well,
everything,
like you just yeah.
everything. Yeah, yeah. Because that auntie could have been an old uncle, and it'd have a similar. I don't know if it would have the same impact, but it'd have a very similar impact. Um, I think there's something about Bibi that she herself brings to the photo, and then obviously the kind of where her kara is in the shot adds kind of to the significance if you were to read into it, like
Yeah.
isn't.
And there's a few people in the book that are getting ready. You know,
Yeah,
it's like
yeah.
about pride and who you are and that process, I guess.
But it's a really simple, like, and I don't mean simple in a like in a derogatory means. I mean it in terms of like it's a pride in just being in their simplicity. Like BBG's just doing her hair. Like there's a guy who's cleaning. I think he's washing his bug. Like that. It to most Western standards isn't like an extreme of getting ready. It's quite just normal really, but there's so much pride in it in terms of its significance and what it means to us, which you've done a brilliant way of capturing. I would also just have to add, because I think I've seen this photo so much, is the front cover photo and the Bibi's on the front cover. I think if I hadn't seen it so much, I would say it was this one, but because I've seen it like everywhere, I'd have to go with the photos of the Bibi doing her hair. Like that's definitely my number one.
Yeah, I think a lot of people love that one.
And obviously there's the photos of the uncles doing their he's tied his bug to the end of the tractor, and he's
Yeah.
doing his buggy there. That like it probably comes next again because it's something that is massively relatable. Like even if you don't wear a turban yourself, a lot of us would have grown up in households with family members who have, so you will have some type of kind of memory of it, and that just shows kind of the universality of that protest really for us, because that could be like your dad, my dad, anybody. Like that could be you or me really.
You know, with the getting ready, I have like obviously growing up in South London, you have friends that are not Punjabi or Sikh or whatever, and we all chill together. And so when you have gone like to stay somewhere overnight, and they just clock, oh, I've never seen my friend without
Yeah,
his
yeah, yeah.
or like, is that how you do it? And I'm like, I never thought about that because I'd never really had to. And that's when I thought, oh, okay, people don't really see this private thing that happens apart unless you're like in our community.
Yes, definitely. And I think the way within which you've brought that out as well is in like it's respectful. I'm always kind of left it. So with all of these podcasts, at the end of it, I'm normally left either kind of quite inspired or like not brain drained, but you know when you take in like so much information and it takes you a while to process it. And every time we talk, I'm always left inspired because I'm like, you're actually capturing things. You're capturing history in real time. And I think that perspective, like I never quite saw it like that. Obviously, doing a history degree, you're literally trained to look backwards. And to see someone looking at the present in the way that you do, but then capturing it in a manner which is as sensitive to the subject as possible and respectful, and then produce a high quality product. I'm just like, the whole kind of chain from start to end is quite as inspiring, especially for, I wouldn't necessarily say I'm a creative, but there is, I guess, some creative process in having to put together and podcast and then edit them and all the rest of it. But then to see kind of what you're doing gives me kind of inspiration to be like, all right, well, like if he can do that, then what about like maybe I can do this? And I'm sure people listening to this are probably thinking the same thing.
I think I'm glad like you can see that and appreciate that because that feels nice for me because you do put basically most of the time you spend thinking about how to do it.
Oh, tell me about it.
So for me, going to Punjab, like for some people, going to take the pictures is the hard bit. For me, that's the easy bit. It's more about how do I put this together? Oh, and also you have to like, this time it was more financial pressure. You have to put your savings to do this, but you care enough that you want to do it. And also you take what's the word? A sensible approach where you feel like, okay, this investment can be like you make your money back like in a sensible way, so you try to do things in a sensible way as well.
I think the other thing that I can appreciate is doing so you're obviously creative in in photography, and obviously with these podcasts it's slightly different, but there's a similar process which you kind of have to put a structure together or think about kind of what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And quite often it's quite a lonely process because you're having to think of a lot of stuff and put a lot of kind of groundwork in before you even would have gone to Punjab, or before like we even have done this recording or whatever. And I don't think a lot of people appreciate that. And it's quite easy when you're not in kind of creative process of your own to be like, oh, like kind of just to badmouth it, or to kind of ignore it, or just think like these things just happen all the time, and they don't. And I think that's one thing that I can appreciate, which is the work that people are doing we can't take for granted, and we have to support those that are doing the work, like yourself and others, and hopefully inspire more people to do whatever it is that they find interesting but equally valuable to the rest of the community.
I think at the start of your journey, you've now built this following. Now you can slow it down and just provide like more quality is what you're doing. You've improved from when you started, and like all of us, we're doing the same now. I think we can slow down slightly and get to the next level, and everyone's coming with us to that, because it's happening. Like there's a lot happening, right? with our generation, which is really exciting.
So you've made it to the end of another great podcast. I hope you really enjoyed this. Let me know what you think of the new structure in the comments, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Otherwise than that, I will see you all next time.